All right. Apologize for being 2 minutes late. I backed up to another meeting today. It's been a busy afternoon. But if you are just joining us for the first time, we are on attributes 3 and 4 of our Tennessee STEM and STEAM Designation Rubric webinar series. 2 Thursdays ago, we did attribute 1. Last Thursday, we did attribute 2. And so today we are diving into 3 and 4. So we combined 3 and 4 just because they're a little bit shorter as far as the number of sub attributes that are within them. Both of those have been recorded. They have been sent over to our communications department to get them up on our website. They have already been uploaded to our YouTube channel, and we'll make sure that those are accessible through our website so that you can go back and watch Series 1 and Series 2. And then, of course, today's webinar is also being recorded so that you can also go back and watch it. My name's Krista McQueen. I appreciate each of you joining us this afternoon to really dive into this. I help the department manage this process of the designation and redesignation pieces of becoming a STEM designated school. My email is found down there at the bottom, mcqueenk@battelle.org. So make sure that you capture that, as I'll be your point of contact as you need any support or have any questions throughout this process. So as I said, we're going to be diving into attributes 3 and 4 today. Attribute 3 is all about professional development. If you had the opportunity to go back and watch Series 1, or you attended Series 1, you know that in 1.3, we kind of focused on the quality of professional development for our leadership team. And this particular piece really focuses on the professional development with our faculty, with our all of our teachers, and really earning that STEM designated model. When we think about it, this is really about ensuring that our teachers feel supported in this process, that they have also had the opportunity to go through different types of STEM pedagogy and learn new STEM initiatives and strategies. And that's really what this piece of professional development is for starting out with attribute 3. And not only thinking about outside PD, but also thinking about how we can learn from other colleagues within our building. So 3.1 is actually quality of professional learning. And when we think about what that actually means, one, it's provided consistently throughout the school year, and it's kind of embedded into the school's STEM action and sustainability plan, which we also talked about in Series 1. 1.1 is that action and sustainability plan, and making sure that in that plan, we have outlined how we're going to support our teachers throughout the school year and make sure that they feel comfortable and confident when completing STEM and STEAM initiatives and tasks. So the first thing that we're going to look through is what the rubric actually says. And this piece of the rubric was so long I couldn't fit it all on one slide. So I had to kind of DV out. And as you know, if you've attended these webinars, we like to focus only on the model portion on the rubric. And we do that because the department will only designate schools that earn 90% in that model range. So obviously, as we're working toward this, we always want to make sure that we're looking at that model piece on the rubric and seeing all the different ways that we can revise and improve our current initiatives. So the first thing that the rubric speaks to is that professional development is ongoing, and it aligns with the STEM and STEAM initiatives that we've planned. What are our STEM goals? What are our STEM initiatives? And how are we going to make sure that we've created PD opportunities to support those? That second piece talks about that teachers have a way of identifying their PD needs. Of course, there are going to be district mandated PDs that we have to attend. There are going to be statewide mandated PDs that we have to attend. But also, our teachers are going to have individual needs as we go throughout this process and as we bleed into wanting to create a STEAM or STEM culture in our building. And our grade levels may have specific needs. So identifying how we're going to collect that information and identifying what we're going to be able to do to be able to make those PDs happen in order to support our teachers. The third bullet there on the rubric talks about teachers observing colleagues. And once we get into the evidence portion of this, I'll dive into these just a little bit more. But teachers observing colleagues and engaging in this formal reflection piece is really important. If we have, a couple of teachers, or we think about our STEM leadership team, if those are the folks that are really driving this work and making sure that it's school-wide and really helping support, then those are the teachers that we want to start out by highlighting and getting teachers inside of those classrooms to see what's going on. Lots of times our teachers are really good at writing lesson plans because they do it every single day, but creating a PBL can be a little bit more of a challenge. And then sometimes teachers struggle on knowing what a PBL looks like in the classroom, how it's delivered. So making sure that we provide opportunities to go see teachers in the building who may already be teaching with an inquiry-based mindset so that they are able to learn from one another. That fourth bullet said that PD is often embedded in the working day and aligns back to those needs. So that kind of aligns back to thinking about what our STEM action and sustainability plan says. This can also be different types of meetings that we have consistently throughout the school year, like PLCs or CPLs or faculty meetings or grade level meetings. All of those things can be job embedded because we can spend those unique 45 minutes or 30-minute blocks ensuring that we're supporting teachers with our STEM and STEAM efforts. And the last bullet and model that I had to move over was that teachers have the opportunity to participate in externships, internships, mentorships, either one of those three, with a higher education or with a post-secondary partnership or with an industry or community partner. And this can look different for everyone. Not all teachers have the time to go out and make this happen, and not all partners have the time to also make this happen. So this piece can also happen virtually. A lot of times when we create PBLs, we're not necessarily the expert on the topic of our PBL. And that's because it's traditionally a real world problem or a community need. And there's typically someone outside of the school building that is going to be the expert in that and can help lend me, the teacher, some advice as I start my planning process. So let's dive into a little bit of different types of pieces of evidence that will help correlate and support 3.1. So obviously when we think about 3.1, we want to make sure that our teachers have project and problem-based learning PD. And that's truly understanding what it takes to build out a high quality PBL. On our website, under our resources page, we do have a PBL template that's approved by the Tennessee Department of Education, and it has all of the steps in it to create a high quality framework. Now, if your school already has a PBL template in place, that is perfectly fine too. I always just recommend just double checking with the framework that's on our website since it is approved, and just cross-checking and making sure that you've hit everything with the template that you're currently implementing. But not only are we thinking about project and problem-based learning, but we're also making sure that we understand the difference between the two. A project-based learning unit, typically all of my students are going to be building the same thing. So for example, if I'm at the elementary level and we're talking about different types of bridges, truss, suspension, and then I assign my students to build a bridge, what are my students doing? They're all building a bridge, correct? So that's more so a project-based learning unit. That's not to say that there is not learning happening and I'm going to have positive student outcomes and my kids are still going to be collaborating and communicating. And we do see a lot more of the project-based learning at that elementary level. The problem-based learning is when we actually take a real-world issue, whether it be within our community, whether it be global, whether it be worldwide, or a problem within the US. It's where we take that real world problem and we turn it into an essential question, and therefore my students are all going to be coming up with unique solutions to that problem. So all of my submissions are not going to look the same. For example, if I go back to that bridge scenario that I gave you, I could turn it around into a problem based when I take a local bridge in my neighborhood that has a complete crack in it, and I assign my students the opportunity to fix that crack. I may have some students that design a whole new bridge, but I may have some students that design some type of contraption that actually closes the gap that or the crack within there. So again, I've connected it to my community. I've made it a real world problem, and all of my students aren't going to come up with the same solution to that. So making sure that our teachers do understand the difference there. And a goal would be that we sprinkle a little bit of both throughout the year, right? We sprinkle a little bit of project and we sprinkle a little bit of problem there. That way our students have the opportunity to, connect that with real world pieces there. Also, when we think about evidence for this, these are different types of professional development or professional learning that would support this particular 3.1 attribute. So attending content area national region conference. So if I'm a specific social studies teacher, or I'm a specific math teacher or ELA teacher, attending any content area focused will suffice here. Also thinking about having tailored professional learning, which goes back to that piece in the rubric that talks about teachers identifying their own specific PD need. Participating in job embedded, we talked about how that could be grade levels, PLCs, faculty meetings, attending content area state conferences, of course, attending PD around project or problem-based learning, anything related to STEAM or STEM pedagogy and initiatives, and then observing our other teachers and our other colleagues. Now that one can often be hard to hit because time is always going to be against us in the classroom, right? We all have mandates. We all have different expectations to meet. And this oftentimes can be one of the more difficult ones to ensure that we're integrating within our building. And I've seen this done lots of different ways. I've seen it done twice a year, meaning teachers observe one another in one time in the first semester and one time in the second semester. I've seen it to where teachers can pick who they want to go observe. I've seen it to where administrators assign someone for them to go see, and they're quick. They're only 15, 20 minutes. There's no reason to sit in there. Essentially, you want to be in there during the bulk of their lesson as well. I've also seen it to where administration or the STEM leadership team kind of picks what the teacher is going in to look at. Whether that be that they're going in to look at how students are using the engineering design process, and they're taking notes and reflecting on different things that they can take back to their classroom, or they go in specifically to look for, are the students communicating, collaborating, using those critical thinking skills? So kind of helping align it to have that STEM focus while you're in there observing that colleague, so that you can take back those initiatives and strategies to your classroom. But different types of pieces of evidence is listed here. So you have PD certificates. If we're observing our colleagues, then we have some type of reflection form that we could use as a piece of evidence here. A master schedule that shows where we have collaborative planning time built in. Any type of agenda or notes. So if I attend a PD or I attend a conference and I took notes, or I have the formal agenda, all of those are good to submit. And then of course, a schedule of professional development days or PLCs, any whole staff or small group. And again, a lot of these may be pictures that we submit. A lot of them may be PDF documents that we submit, or PowerPoints from that particular PD that we did attend. I do believe I have an actual example. Yeah, so here you can see that this particular school created a table where they outlined all of the professional development sessions that had been attended, what they learned or what that focus was of that PD, when it happened, and then the faculty members that were in attendance. So making sure that we have a good variety here, and we work to make sure that we have identified all of the PDs that our teachers attend. Again, all of our teachers are going to have different PD needs. And then other supporting evidence here was Zooming with community partners. That was listed here for quality of professional development as they helped them design PBLs. That table here is what we're looking at over here. We had a couple of PowerPoints that were submitted of PDs, and then some quick notes or agenda from that particular PD day. So again, we've talked about several times in the series about making sure that we stay organized and making sure that we, have all of the attributes in a place that is easy access. It truly does make the application process a lot easier when we're not scrambling around or trying to contact all of these teachers to get me to get the evidence that's needed. This particular school used Google Drive, but we've seen OneNote, we've seen SharePoint. Making sure, that we have everything in one place really helps makes things smooth. All right, we're going to dive into 3.2 now, which is designing PBLs. So in 3.1, that's where we really focus on making sure that our teachers have the PD to design a PBL. But this really focuses on making sure that we've connected our partnerships, we've connected our industry. One of the underlying words here is that it's custom designed. Now, there's no reason to reinvent the wheel, right? There are PBLs out there. You can find them online. You can find them on our website. The key when we find those different resources is making sure that we have customized it to fit our community and fit our need and fit our students. And sometimes that's only making minor adjustments. Sometimes that's adjusting the driving question to actually be a business or a connection within our community so that our students actually, can make those connections with those. So when we look at the rubric here, again, we're going to focus in the model category. There are three different statements here, and that's that teachers collaborate to create custom design, project, and problem-based learning units or modules. Again, this will typically happen in PLC meetings or grade level meetings, typically starting with the district pacing guide or the school's pacing guide, looking at our quarters, looking at our standards, lots of times starting with those intentional hit standards. So those standards that get hit multiple times throughout the school year is a good place to start. We've seen schools start with this something called a 4-square model. And if you Google that, it'll come up with all different kinds of resources. But really pulling out all of the subject areas in a 4-square model. And in the middle is our PBL topic idea. And then we're just aligning those standards. And then we're jotting down all types of different things to help support that. That second piece is higher education or industry partners contribute to the design of the school's custom built PBL. And we talked a little bit about this when we were in 3.1, but it really is crucial that we identify our industry partners and our community stakeholders, and we not only use them to, judge our science fairs or our STEM expos. And not only do we use them to guest speak to our students and have that student experience with that community partner, but the teacher also utilizes them. So it's wonderful and a part of the process for the industry partner to be in the student experience, but also a part of this process is the teacher. And so we talked about how the teacher creating that PBL can connect with the partner beforehand, getting their advice, their input, their feedback before the PBL lessons start can really help ensure that we're hitting the mark on things that we might not be familiar with. So that can be done via email, sending them your lesson saying, hey, I'm going to be teaching this in 2 weeks. Look it over. Do you see anything that I didn't hit that you know that I should hit? What problems are you facing in your workplace now? It can be a phone call, it can be a Zoom, but just making sure that we take the time to connect the teacher and the partner, on the forefront of that lesson plan. And then that last piece is, of course, making sure that our PBLs are tied to Tennessee state standards and that they support those 21st century skills. That's also thinking about those 4 C's, the creativity, critical thinking, collaboration, and communication, making sure that the lesson and the PBL that we create supports those different things. So when we think about evidence here, most of the time, different types of evidence that we're going to get here is PBL lesson plans. So reviewers are going to look to see, can I tell that there's communication and collaboration happening because it is built in to the daily activities that happen? Is it tied to Tennessee state standards? Is it tied to multiple Tennessee state standards? Is it student led? Are they engaging in this real world content where it forces them to come up with multiple solutions? And rubrics are another great piece to think about here as pieces of evidence. If you look at our PBL template, you'll see that there is a pre-made rubric that attaches at the very end of every single PBL unit. And that's to ensure that we're making sure that our students have mastered the standards that we've taught during this entire unit and this entire PBL. So rubrics are a really good thing to be able to upload here and be able to show that students have, created that mastery. Also, that culminating project, which is really thinking about how, okay, the students completed the PBL, that now they have a prototype or they have a final design or they have a presentation or they've created a video. And that culminating event is really about how the student is going to showcase that publicly. So are they going to present it to the class? Are they going to present it to your STEM leadership team? Are they going to go and present it to a younger grade? Are they going to go present it to another class or the school board? Not only does that give ownership to the student, they've just spent all of this time working on this PBL, they created this prototype, it brings them satisfaction and excitement to share what they've done, but it also has them working on those 21st century skills. It also has them working on their communication, their eye contact, their hand coordination, how they're presenting themselves, all help them build those workplace readiness skills. So here was just a screenshot of a example of things that were submitted for this. They submitted a ton of PBLs. Like I said, PBLs will be key here. Obviously 3.2 is designing PBLs. So reviewers definitely want to see PBLs. So you can open up each of these folders here and view the lesson plan, but then not only that, there's also pictures and other files underneath and outside the folders that also support that. So I have pictures, I have a slide deck in here to show 21st century skills are hit. Here's snippets out of the Plan Book EDU that they have. So lots of different ways to showcase your PBLs and showcase that you have a variety of PBLs and that they're hitting multiple Tennessee state standards. When we think about STEAM in this category, that A, so when we go back to thinking about that, when we go back to looking at 3.1 and 3.2 for the particular attribute of professional development, making sure that some of our professional development that we offer teachers does support that A. I've said it every single series and I still stand by it. If we are authentically integrating STEM, then we're authentically integrating STEAM. To me, they are interchangeable. And if I am correctly doing STEM, then the arts is in there, promise. But lots of schools want to know exactly what they should be uploading and what they should be doing to make sure that they hit that A. And really, if we're doing STEM, then there's going to be no question that the A is going to bleed through. When we go back to thinking about 3.2 and we go back to thinking about our PBLs, Lots of times our teachers just aren't familiar, our classroom teachers aren't familiar with art standards. 99% of the time, I can find an art standard that will naturally fall into the PBL that I've already created, whether it be, my students creating a prototype or they're creating a digital design of some kind. They're It's more about making sure that our teachers are familiar with where the art standards can be found and checking PBLs to see if one naturally aligns to it. This is also thinking about, our music class or our theater class, or our PE classes. It's also thinking about not just art, but, thinking about the theatric of what that entails too. Um, but again, they go hand in hand. So if there's not necessarily separate evidence when we're thinking about the A, because it's going to naturally align and naturally fall into the things that you're already doing. So we're going to move into attribute 4, which is achievement. So this is really focused heavily on data and heavily on assessment. Um, I feel like this is one of the ones that come a lot easier to schools, one that schools typically don't stress about. Why? Because Tennessee loves data and we have data coming out of our ears. We can go, if somebody walks into your building and says, I want to see this data, you can easily pull it up and show it to them. So we do have, the opportunity to showcase lots of different types of data and assessments of how we're using it to drive our instruction and make those smart decisions that support our students. But specifically, 4.1 is focused on performance assessments. So thinking about all of the varieties of different ways that we measure whether or not our students have learned our content. So here we're thinking things like formative and summative assessments. We're thinking about pre and post assessments. We're thinking about exit tickets. We're thinking about rubrics. All of those things teachers probably already do. And it's just about finding the ones that are really strong and using them as evidence. But we're going to take a peek into the rubric here. So teachers use performance-based assessment to determine student learning. That's something that we do all the time. Pre and post assessments are used to show student growth. Pre and post assessments may not be something that naturally all teachers do. So thinking about how we can incorporate that or utilize that before or after we implement a PBL unit, whether it's quickly surveying with a 1 to 3 question survey to kind of gather that background information from the student on the forefront, and then resending that back out, identifying, now how has the student's perspective of that PBL topic changed. Teachers use observation to monitor student dialogue and assess student processes in problem solving and innovation. When we do PBLs, they are messy, right? It is a chaotic type of way to teach. So sometimes if we're the teacher that is the type A, it can be really hard to let go and let your students do. It can be really hard to let the students take the reins because you just want to reel them back in. But PBL is really about letting the student take control. So in this piece, this is really about, have I become the facilitator? Are my teachers walking around the room, listening to conversation, not providing answers, but providing those assessing and advancing questions to move them or steer them in these different types of direction, all towards a solution to their problem that they're trying to solve. That fourth bullet there, students participate in self-evaluation and goal setting consistently. So lots of times for this piece, we see like a student goal setting folder or sheet that the student frequently looks at, maybe after a benchmark or a particular RTI intervention time. We've also seen it to where in the younger grades, it's more like smiley faces, or colored dots to kind of identify their goals with that. That last bullet there says that the school uses data from statewide and school assessments to drive instructional decisions. And I have no doubt in my mind that every school in Tennessee is doing this last bullet. We all take our school's statewide data, we all review it, we all look at it to make instructions to be able to drive our decision. So it's really just taking snippets of that as pieces of evidence. So, evidence specific here, portfolios. So this can be student work samples, collections of student goal setting sheets. I have also said it in every series is making sure that when we utilize and we upload different pieces of evidence that they're completed pieces of evidence. We don't want to see a student goal setting sheet that's blank, right? That tells the reviewer nothing. There's nothing written on it. We don't know whether or not it's actually implemented in your building if it's submitted blank. So making sure that as we think about pulling student work samples or portfolios, that they are true examples straight from our students. Group projects that require planning, research, discussion, debate, and presentation. So this is going back to thinking about a PBL that we could submit here for evidence that really supports that. Authentic assessment on products using rubrics. So we talked about rubrics, we talked about exit tickets, we talked about pre and post surveys. All of those would be ideal to submit here. Data walls was another thing. I don't think that we particularly, actually, we touch on data walls in 4.2. Sorry, I had a question in the chat. I want to make sure I saw it. What period of time should evidence cover? We're on a 2-year plan. We would submit evidence for January through December. Correct. So when we think about evidence, the department accepts evidence up to a year back. So it can be your current school year, and then you can also go back in a year. So if I'm applying in 2024, 2025, then I can pull things that happened in 2023, 2022, 2023 year that also can be used as evidence. So we allow it to go back 1 year. All right, so here is a snippet into 4.1. So you can see that they have writing portfolios that they submitted. They submitted a parent survey. They submitted a couple different rubrics and data from those rubrics. They submitted some data conference reports, some report cards, science notebooks. They submitted a design process rubric that was used during a PBL unit, a KWL chart of a student work sample, and then another example of a completed performance assessment rubric. So lots of different things can be categorized here. And again, this is straight out of a Google folder for them. All we had to do as a reviewer was click on that link and all of this stuff opened up for us. Lastly, in this section, we have 4.2, which is accountability of data. So here we really focus on vertically and horizontally, how are we aligning those formative and summative assessments? How are we still using them to drive instructional decisions and promote that student achievement, all with those positive outcomes? So here, this really focuses on thinking about how we track individualized student data. So earlier in 4.1, we really focused on, okay, how are our students setting goals? Now here we focus on how are we using that student data? How is it tracked down to the individual student? And then do students understand their data? Do they understand where their goals are, what their goals are, how they're going to reach their goals? So starting at the bottom here is that student data conference piece. You know, are we checking in with our students individually after benchmarks or other types of assessments to let the student know what their data is, help them interpret it and understand it? Data walls, a variety of other data tracking systems are employed. Lots of times as reviewers, you know, if we come into a school for a site visit, lots of times we see data walls like in the PLC room or if they are in the hallways or in the classroom, they're typically coded, to protect the student identity, but data walls are there to show that. Again, that student data is tracked down to the individual need, and lots of times our data walls can help us, see that. Teachers collect formative data and they maintain records for all of their students. So again, being able to show that teachers are collecting that information. And then again, it goes back to being able to use all of those standardized tests to be able to drive instruction for that piece. So here, a couple of different things to think about. Going back to our master schedule, thinking about our collaborative planning or our grade level meeting times. Are we utilizing those times to review data, assessment data, talk about, past standards, and talking about, okay, well, my kids did not get mastery with this standard, and talking about strategies and initiatives I need to do to make sure that I have the capability to reteach those standards to make sure that my students do master them. So I'm confident that those types of conversations are happening, but being able to show that you do have that built-in planning time. Teachers provide evidence of instructional change based on data, so that I can show that reflection in a lesson plan where I have to go back and reteach a particular standard, and I can make that note on my lesson plan, especially if I'm using like Planbook EDU or ED. I don't know, I can't remember what the other one was. I always use Planbook EDU when I was in the classroom, but I can make that note on there and I can take a screenshot of it and use that for evidence too. And then being able to show that students do participate in self-evaluation and goal setting. And that can be anything from a particular sheet that the student fills out. It could be a folder or a notebook that stays with them, or a portfolio, but something where the student has completed that. So here we have a rubric, we have a goal wall, a picture of a goal wall. We have the schedule that showcases that they have planning time. We have a STEM wall of fame, a STEM spotlight. We have aims, data, all types of different pieces of evidence that you can submit for this particular attribute. So again, we've talked about in the past webinar series that the application itself asks you to upload 1 to 3 pieces of evidence. Obviously, the things that I've shown you today are way past that mark, and that's okay. This process is about telling your school story, and there is nothing wrong with oversharing. Making sure that you provide a clear picture to the reviewers, helps the reviewer have no denying that this is a living, breathing culture within your building. I've seen schools submit 1 and I've seen schools submit 50, like it's just a matter of what you have, what you're able to showcase, and how you want to showcase those different things. Pictures, lots of times too, I've seen it to where, and this is not a requirement, it's not an expectation, I just like to throw it out there. We've seen pictures that also come with like a little bullet attached to it explaining what's happening in that picture. Occasionally it can be hard for a reviewer to decipher, what you want me to see out of it. I may look at it and see 3 kids sitting around a table when I should be seeing that 3 kids are sitting around a table, they're collaborating, communicating, their notebooks in front of them, and they're working in the brainstorming stage of the engineering design process, right? So a picture can tell me a lot, but sometimes as a reviewer, it's left up for interpretation. So anytime that you feel like that picture doesn't clearly tell your story, adding that little footnote so that, we know what that picture actually aligns to. But that is attribute 3 and that is attribute 4. They only had 2 subsets in each of those, 3.1 and 3.2. Again, these STEAM characteristics, when we think about assessments and we think about our data, again, all of those things are going to naturally align. There is nothing separate that you need to be doing to making sure that you're having the A present in all of these things, because again, they go hand in hand. If we're living and breathing a culture of STEM, then we're living and breathing a culture of STEAM. So But that does take us to the end of this particular attribute. We are on our final series with the Tennessee STEM rubric series. Attribute 5 will be next Thursday. So we'll be talking about community and post-secondary partnerships, which play a huge piece into the whole rubric and the whole application process. They do have their own attribute, but really we should see presence of partnerships throughout this entire rubric. We go back to thinking about 1.1, our action plan. Our community and stakeholders should be giving us feedback on that. We go back to 2.4, which is STEM careers. Our community partners should be helping us support that and helping us share their careers with our kids. We go back to 3.2, which is designing PBLs. Our partners should really be helping our teachers authentically design those PBLs. So our community partners are really sprinkled throughout most of our attributes through the rubric, but they do have, that particular, their own section in the rubric. And we have made a couple of changes, just a couple of language changes. So make sure that you tune in on Thursday, October 5th for that same time. The language that we really updated was talking about short-term and long-term partners. So we're really going to talk through what it looks like to have a short-term partner and what it looks like to have a long-term partner, and what the rubric now says, about having both of those partnerships. So we will dive into that on Thursday, October 5th, 3:30 to 4:30. Our link is on the website. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing. And I'm going to go ahead and stop recording, and then we can go through any questions that anyone has.